That eventually culminated in a single panic attack. Just one. Now, I used to think a panic attack was an excuse that a weak-minded person makes because they can't keep their shit together, right? That's not, I assure you that's not it. When I had one, and I've only had one ever in my life, I thought I was dying. I did. I was breathing heavy. I was sweating. My heart was pounding. I felt lightheaded and dizzy, and it was just awful. I thought I was dying. So I called my doctor up and said, "Doc, here's what's going on." And he said, "All right, I'm going to write you a script. You got to run down to the pharmacy, and you got to get this script right away." No, it's even worse than that. It's Ativan. I'd never heard of Ativan. I was a multivitamin and aspirin guy. Seriously, I just would never consider an antidepressant. I didn't know what I was getting into with the Ativan, but he put me on 2 milligrams of Ativan a day and left me there for 4.5 years. I did not know what a benzodiazepine was. I didn't think I really even understood it was a tranquilizer. It was just this little tiny pill, 0.5 milligram. Nothing, a little tiny thing. It couldn't be that bad, right? Didn't warn me about tolerance. Didn't warn me about paradoxical effects. Didn't warn me about dangerous withdrawal. Didn't warn me about interactions with alcohol. None of it. He just wrote me this script. Got rid of the crazy girlfriend, by the way, right after that. She was gone. It was clear that I needed to do that. And so for some time after that, I functioned very well. I built my business. I built one of the biggest, I think at the time was the largest Bitcoin mining operation in North America. I had a building that never had snow on the roof. The guys down at the power plant were always throwing extra switches for me. It was quite an operation, and I did pretty well with the Bitcoin for a while. What I didn't realize is I was slowly building tolerance to this stuff. He put me on 2 milligrams a day and just left me there, and I dutifully took it as prescribed. I went to his office every few months and reported back what was going on. For a while, that was fine. After a couple of years, though, I was crawling out of my skin. I had developed a tolerance, and without adjusting my dosage up, I was in constant tolerance withdrawal. So now I'm taking a tranquilizer, which makes me feel a little bit better every time I take it. But my baseline anxiety is going through the roof, and it was very insidious. Like I said, it took years, but every time I took this little pill, I felt a little better. So I thought it was me. Never occurred to me that it was the pill because this stuff hadn't been disclosed to me. It got to the point where my anxiety was so bad, I was crawling out of my skin. I completely destroyed my business. I pissed away what should have been about $22 million worth of Bitcoin. I just couldn't make decisions. I had some technical problems in my network. I couldn't analyze anything. I just couldn't allocate resources appropriately. I just ruined, this beautiful thing. I experienced depersonalization, this idea that I'm walking around outside of myself, watching my body live my life without a lot of input from me. Derealization, this idea that nothing's real around you. There's no consequences for anything. I experienced severe disinhibition, kind of like being drunk all the time. You could have told me to do just about anything, and I would. And my life pretty much fell apart. I couldn't pay my bills. I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't do anything. I was just a walking zombie crawling out of my skin. Eventually turned to cannabis, first to get a little bit of sleep. It worked for a while. But then I needed more and more of that, and I needed to use it earlier and earlier in the day. It got to the point where I would wake up, fire up, and just be lazy. It was the only way I could stand being in my own skin. I was self-medicating. I didn't understand what that was at the time, but I was doing what I had to do to feel better. Unfortunately, I'm a 20-year military veteran, a senior officer. I don't really know where to get marijuana and all that other stuff, so I ended up hanging out. Seriously, it was hard back then. Ended up making contact with some fairly unsavory folks, people I wouldn't normally associate with. They saw that I had some money, and they took advantage of me. It wasn't long before I became a raging cocaine addict. sticking needles in my arms, heroin, meth, you name it, anything I get in a needle. I thought needles were cool. That's how screwed up my brain was. That was a very short period during which I did that sort of horrible thing. I'm lucky to be alive. Who knows what they were giving me? I mean, it's stuff off the street. I tore my arms up pretty bad. It was cut with borax or who knows, baby powder. I don't know. But my arms were rotting off, and I looked at myself one day and said, I got to go do something about this. So I went back to the prescribing doc, and I said, hey, doc, look what I'm doing to myself. He looks at me and says, you got to go to rehab. I'm like, yeah, no shit. I got to go to rehab. So he says, first we got to get you off the Ativan. So he cold turkeyed me. Yeah, no, it was not good. It turns out that the neuroadaptations that occur when you're taking this stuff for a long time are insidious and profound. I won't go deep into the neuroscience because I think I'm probably going long here a little bit, but physical neuroadaptations happen that try to undermine and counteract this drug, and those things don't return to normal quickly. And when you remove the drug, even though the dose I was taking was not nearly enough to keep me in any kind of normal state, it's like you compress this giant spring and it just goes boom. So what happened to me was, I believe I was probably close to having a seizure. I was foaming at the mouth. I felt like cold ice water was running down my head every few minutes. I was shaking. Heat, sound, light, everything was super intense for me. I couldn't stand the sound of the air conditioning in my house. I didn't know this was the Ativan. I had no idea. Remember, I hadn't been warned. I didn't even know how this stuff worked. I knew nothing about it at this point. I thought I was just having some kind of meltdown. I didn't know what was wrong. It was me. It had to be me, right? So I call the doctor's office up, and I go, Doc, I don't know what's going on with me. And he goes, oh, it's stress. Okay, I didn't really like that answer, but I call my brother up, and so I get on the Google now. Now we have the Google. So I get on Google, I start Googling my plethora of bizarre symptoms, and I come up with multiple sclerosis. Common misdiagnosis in people who are going through benzodiazepine withdrawal. Remember, I didn't know what a benzodiazepine was yet. My brother has multiple sclerosis. So I call my brother up. I say, Scott, I got this, and this, and this. And he says, you got it bad, dude. You need to go see the doctor. You're going to die. I said, okay. So I call my GP, 2 weeks to get an appointment. I begged. I pleaded. I told him, whoever was on the phone, they just weren't listening to me. So I got my appointment for 2 weeks and resign myself to just toughing it out. My brother called me up the next day and said, hey, are you taking any benzos? So what's a benzo? Benzodiazepines. What's a benzodiazepine? I don't know. Word alphabet soup, right? So he starts listing off various benzodiazepines. He gets down to Ativan, and I say, stop, that's the one. Ativan, I've been taking it for years. He goes, man, you're going through benzodiazepine withdrawal. I said, what? He said, look it up. So I looked it up. Yeah, no shit, I was going through benzodiazepine withdrawal. Call the doctor's office up again. Now he's on vacation. Really had to beat him up to get him on the phone. He gets on the phone. He's pissed because I'm bothering him. And now I have to convince him that I'm going through benzodiazepine withdrawal. Again, he tells me it's stress. He must have got on the Google too, because later that night he called me up and said, okay, maybe you are going through benzodiazepine withdrawal. I'm going to prescribe you Valium. Another fucking benzodiazepine? Really? I don't want the Valium. But, I'm out of my mind at this point. I'll do just about anything to feel better. So he writes me a script for Valium, sends it to my mail order pharmacy, despite the fact I told him I needed it right away. So 10 days go by before the Valium shows up. By the way, he was correct to prescribe me Valium. That is the correct way to taper off of a short half-life benzodiazepine. You have to replace it with a long half-life benzodiazepine and then go through a very long, painful process of tapering back off. But I didn't know this at this point. The other thing he didn't know is he prescribed me 2 milligrams of Valium. Well, the equivalent dosage of Valium is 20 milligrams. So even if I took it, it wouldn't have worked. And I hated this guy at this point, so screw him. But 10 days later, when the Valium finally showed up, I had gone up the backside of the acute withdrawal curve. I was on my way back down, and in my linear mind, I was getting better rapidly. And I thought, I'm going to be fine in a couple of months. No way I'm touching another one of these medications. I'm going to tough it out. So I sat in a darkened room for 7 months with noise-canceling headphones on, air conditioning at 65, rocking back and forth, trying to convince myself not to blow my head off. I literally lived from minute to minute for months. I slept for no more than half an hour, maybe an hour, for many, many, many months after that. I just went through absolute hell. But during that time, I read everything I could find about benzodiazepines. Finally came to understand the mechanisms and that you needed a replacement and you had to taper off and all that stuff. So very, very hard to find a doctor who knows how to do that. I was lucky. The former chief of medicine from Portsmouth Naval Medical Center had been doing this for many years, and I can't remember how I stumbled across this guy, but that guy was my angel. We figured I was on about 20 milligrams of Valium, and it took me 2.5 years to taper off of it. The Valium took the edge off of it, but I was not functioning. I laid on the couch for 2.5 years, basically doing nothing. Stuck a pistol in my mouth more times than I can count. It was just excruciating. The suicide rate for people going through that is astronomically high. I see some people know that. A lot of nodding over here. Yeah, this is rough stuff, guys. This is not an uncommon story. This is what's so alarming. We have so many problems at veterans healthcare. They do some good things. But for guys coming back with PTSD, putting them on benzodiazepines certainly is bad enough. That was one med for me. I know plenty of guys who are on 10, 12, 15 medications. As the side effects come up, they just give them another one to treat the side effects. Nobody knows what the interactions on these drugs are. These polypharma cases are disasters. This is why 44 veterans a day are killing themselves. It's not 22 anymore. I don't know if you guys saw that study. Duke and the University of Alabama just put out a study. They had neglected guys on active duty and drug overdoses. So that 22 a day, that's the old number. It's more like 44 a day. I kind of wonder if it's higher. So I'll get to the end of the story here. I'm fine right now, by the way. Great to be here.